Day 2 of the World Cup is here. If you thought yesterday's opening ceremonies were crazy, just wait because we got 2 more opening ceremonies coming today. First, starting off north of the border in Toronto as Canada open up Group B play, hosting Bosnia and Herzegovina. That kickoff will be at 3 o'clock. Later on that day, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, we travel over to the west coast of the United States, the beautiful SoFi Stadium, where the United States will be kicking off Group D action against Paraguay. I'm sure both opening ceremonies will have a lot of pomp and circumstance and just be very much over the top because that's what, it's what FIFA likes to show. And I don't see any better way than doing it with a lot of music and a lot of, A/B-list celebrities doing performances. So, got a lot to get to here. We'll actually focus on the games instead of the opening ceremonies. So, let's buckle up your seatbelts and let's get after it. Welcome into match day 2 of the 2026 World Cup. We are already 2 matches in, which means there's only 102 to go. So better enjoy them while they last. Welcome in to this second edition of World Cup Preview. I'm your host, as always, Nick Burt, here on the Nick Burt Sports Network. As mentioned, 2 matches today. We're going to start off with our earlier match of the day, and that is going to be Canada going up against Bosnia and Herzegovina in Toronto to open up the Canada side of World Cup 2026. So, starting off here, the biggest thing for me in this game, Canada has injury problems, and that is going to be a massive, massive factor here because their captain, their best player, Alphonso Davies, said last week he's not going to be healthy. How is that going to play out? Moises Bombito, their center back, picked up an injury. He's most likely not going to play. There was questions if he was even going to be in the World Cup squad. He obviously is. How is that going to play out? There's a lot to get to here. So you got to look at both sides of it. But this is going to be quite the interesting game. So with this game, obviously, Bosnia back on the international stage for the first time since 2014. If you remember back to the Group B previews, I mentioned back in 2014, they were led by striker Edin Džeko. Well, it is now 2026, and Bosnia and Herzegovina are still being led by striker Edin Džeko. He is now 41 years old. He will still have a starting spot. He's kind of cult hero of the World Cup. Obviously, they got grouped back in 2014, but he's still a decent striker. He's not going to be your everyday 90-minute striker, but he can still put out good shifts, and you would expect this is probably going to be one of those games where he wants to put one of the best shifts he's had in an international shirt out there. Now, for Canada, obviously hosting a World Cup, there's already pressure with that, but the fact Canada has still yet to pick up a point in World Cup play after being at the World Cup in 1986, coincidentally hosted by Mexico, and 2022, where, of course, they were in Qatar, got grouped, didn't pick up a point, but they did pick up their first ever World Cup goal. I guess that's a small victory, but this team has changed a lot since those games 4 years ago. And the biggest one is the manager. John Herdman, no longer the manager of this Canada team. It is now American Jesse Marsch, who feels like he has something to prove. He just did sign a contract extension with the Canadian Soccer Federation, so he will be the manager. I believe the contract goes till 2030. But he's always felt like he's had a chip on his shoulders, whether it be when he was managing, in Germany with RB Leipzig, whether it be when he was manager of Leeds for a portion of time. Now, that didn't go well, but Then you had the whole saga with him at least saying that it seemed like he was going to be the guy to replace Greg Berhalter after the World Cup in 2022. Last minute, it sounds like the U.S. decides to change its mind, bring back Berhalter. He feels slighted. He then goes to take the Canada job, and that's obviously where he's been since then. You look at his achievements in this Canada job, I believe he's gotten a Nations League third place. I believe they've gotten a second place under him. They made it to the semifinals of 2024 Copa America. That was a massive, massive moment for Canada soccer. I believe they've gotten to a semifinals of a Gold Cup. So they do have some success mixed in there, but they have to get over that hump on the World Cup stage. And there is truly no better place to do it than on home soil in Toronto in front of what should be a pro-Canada crowd. I know there are some reports coming from the Bosnian consulate in Toronto that they're expecting to have like 30,000 people there tomorrow. I don't truly believe that. If anything, it's going to be like 60-40 Canada, but I could be wrong here. Overall, though, this is going to be quite the interesting difference in styles here because Bosnia got here through the playoffs. They had to go to a penalty shootout against Wales in the semifinals, and they had to go to a penalty shootout against Italy in the final. This is a team that plays really defensively. They like to sit back. They don't really take many opportunities attacking. So counter that with this kind of pragmatic style that Jesse Marsch plays. Yes, they do sit back a little bit in a rough 4-4-2, but when they go on the attack, they will be going after you. It's going to be really interesting to me because I feel like Canada has more of the youth on their side than Bosnia does. Bosnia does have some really good young players mixed in there, but how is Canada going to exploit that? That's going to be really interesting for me to watch. Overall, though, this is such a tough game to predict because I mentioned the stat yesterday. Every single host nation in their first World Cup game, all the way back to 1930, has either won or drawn except Qatar in 2022. It is absolutely imperative for Canada to at least get a point tomorrow. They can, if they lose this game, I already think their World Cup is in massive trouble. I know they still have a Qatar game mixed in there, and who knows, depending on how Qatar play, that could be trouble too. But you always look at the big name in this group, and that big name is Switzerland. Even though they aren't like truly a big name, that's the biggest team in this group. They are the best team in this group. Canada, if they go behind Bosnia here, then it feels like you're more fighting for third place than you are for second or even potentially first. So it feels like this is already kind of a must-win situation for Canada. And even then, a draw, I think, will suffice for now. But you need to get your first World Cup points early in this tournament. It has to be this game or the next game. You cannot leave that to the final day. If you leave that to the final day, too much can go wrong. And then we are sitting here the end of the group stage saying, where did it go wrong for Canada? How have they gone now 3 World Cups without picking up a single point? Overall, though, I did mention earlier, injuries are the biggest worry for me with this Canadian team. Obviously, they already dropped Marcelo Flores. That is a massive loss on the attacking end of things. Alphonso Davies isn't healthy. I don't know if he's going to be healthy all tournament. That's a big problem. Moises Bombito on the back line, that's a problem. Goalkeeper situation seems to have finally been figured out. Jesse Marsch named Maxime Crépeau as goalkeeper. So I'm hopeful here that Canada can finally pull out their first World Cup points of, the Federation's history. So I know in my predictions I said 2-1 Canada. I'm still going to stick with that. I think it's going to end up being 2-1 Canada. Massive win. Red and white all over Toronto. Should be a just incredible atmosphere to be in. So given that, it's going to be an interesting dynamic to see how Canada faces the pressure on home soil, because it also kind of feels like out of the three host nations, they're the one with the least amount of pressure playing on home soil, because I don't know if a lot of people are expecting a lot from them. But also it feels like there is massive pressure given they just have never done anything on the World Cup stage. So interesting balance out here. It's going to be intriguing either way, because this Bosnia team can be dangerous when they want to be. And obviously they're not playing for penalty kicks here. They may just be playing for a 0-0 draw. So overall, interesting tactical matchup. I'm going to be interested to see how that plays out. We move on to our second game of the day, and it is your main host of this tournament, is the United States kicking off their campaign against Paraguay. Now, with this game, it's very interesting because everybody in the United States group, they have played in a friendly within the past, I think, 12 to 14 months, if I'm not mistaken, which is very, very rare, especially given all those games were played prior to the draw. So these teams both kind of know how they're going to play out. Now, completely different squads from when they played, but you kind of get the feel of already what they know, what kind of setup they're going to be in, all that kind of stuff. This Paraguay team feels like they have the potential to be quite good at this tournament. The biggest problem is it seems like everybody is dropping with injuries. Right now, I feel like their main attacking option is Miguel Almirón. And, he's a good, secondary piece. He shouldn't be the main option. That is a big, big problem, I think, for Paraguay. You look at their, back line isn't the strongest. It isn't, just the whole team overall just kind of isn't the strongest. And that is partially due to injuries. There are some massive names missing here for Paraguay. Overall, though, they've done quite well recently. I believe they've won 3 out of their last 5 games. One of those last 5 games was that game against the U.S. where they lost 2-1. But I believe they have a win against Mexico in that time frame. I want to say the other 2 are Greece and El Salvador. I could be wrong there, but it's something like that. So it's like no pushover teams. Like they are playing teams that are genuinely decent and they're winning. But overall, this is more about the United States and how that's going to play out. They feel like they have the most pressure on them host-wise. I know I mentioned Mexico. If things go wrong in Mexico, the crowd's going to turn on them. That's very true. But this United States team feels like it's every World Cup. It feels like this is the moment for soccer in America. And then they lose in the round of 16. This is the moment for soccer in America. They lose in the round of 16. Oh, this is finally... Wait a minute. We didn't even qualify for a World Cup. This feels like this has to be the moment. You are hosting the World Cup. You have probably the best team on paper you've ever had. You have the best manager you've ever had. This is a massive moment for the United States. And the fact that this group is so evenly matched, points are going to be absolutely everything. Because the nightmare scenario here is the U.S. plays like they have been. They've lost 3 out of their last 5. Now, they have played quite good opponents. They've lost to Germany. They lost to Portugal. They've lost to Belgium. Those are very good teams. All of those probably better than Paraguay. But the nightmare scenario here is the United States gets grouped, let alone they somehow finish on 0 points. Soccer is dead in America. Completely. DOA, dead on arrival. That it has to be absolutely avoided here. And I think it will be. I'm just saying that is absolute worst case scenario here. They have a good enough team to make a run to the quarterfinals. I think quarterfinals is the ceiling. It's all going to depend on how they actually play, though, because we saw the last two friendlies. They had a 3-2 win against Senegal, which was good. They looked good. They didn't look great. And they had a 2-1 loss against Germany. Now, they looked, I think, better in that Germany game, but the mental lapses that led to those two German goals were just so mind-boggling. It's like, what is even happening here? That is just absolutely insane to watch that somehow happened. Again, it's kind of mind-boggling, those two goals, even as I think back to it now. Overall, though, the United States has this grandiose opportunity on a silver platter. Because although all these teams are kind of equal in this group, the United States should be winning all these games. They can beat all three of these teams. They have beat all three of these teams. It's just, how is Mauricio Pochettino going to manage this lineup? How are the players going to react? Because, all the talk has been about, Christian Pulisic, 2026, he hasn't scored a single goal in league play. Well, he scored in the friendly against Senegal. And does that now translate to the World Cup? Or is it still going to be that drought that we've seen all of 2026 for AC Milan? That's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, there are other players. I look at Florian Balogun, who had a phenomenal season at AS Monaco. And he kind of is on fire coming into this World Cup. How is that midfield going to look? I think everybody's assuming that it's going to be, Tyler Adams, especially defensive midfield. Everybody's assuming it's going to be Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie. Does Pochettino decide, hey, one of you aren't starting this game, I'm putting, Sebastian Berhalter starting up front or starting in that lineup? I don't think that's going to happen, but I don't know. What's the health of Chris Richards? He is your best center back. Hasn't played in, I believe, a month. Got injured in the semifinal of the UEFA Conference League for Crystal Palace. How is that going to play out? And overall, who is starting in net? We believe it's going to be Matt Freese, but do you go back to Matt Turner? It's an interesting predicament the United States is in because they have so many questions with this team, even though this should be the best U.S. team we've ever seen on the field. Talent-wise, are they going to be the actual best team we've ever seen on the field? That is still a question to be answered because there are the teams long before them. I'm thinking of 2002 when they made it to the quarterfinal. I'm thinking of 2010. I'm thinking of 2014. Those teams actually had grit, it felt like. They had that kind of underdog spirit here. Well, the United States is now they are the top dog in this group. Now, overall in world football, they obviously are not. They are still massive underdogs. But you are now being chased. You are not the chaser. How does the United States play up to that? That is going to be interesting to see because truly this is the first time ever the United States is in a group where it feels like they are the biggest team in that group. You think back to 2022, they were in a group with England. Same with 2010. 2014, they were in the group of death. They had, the eventual champions Germany, and they had Portugal. You think back to 2006, they had champions Italy in there. And you keep going back and back. The United States has always had that one team in their group from that, basically the first pot, that was like, that's the team we should be striving to be. And if we can get a draw against them, that's going to be massive for soccer in the U.S. Well, now the U.S. is on the opposite side of that in this group, where everybody's like, well, everybody can beat anybody in this group. Why not us? That's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Overall, though, I think the United States still gets a win here, probably a little bit comfortably. I'll go 2-0, but it's just, it feels like the pressure is on the U.S. so much in this game. Even though this is just the first game of the group stage, it feels like they have to get a win here. So given that wraps up day 2. We still only have 2 games. It really gets underway come Saturday. So we will be back here tomorrow morning giving you a preview of all 3 matches we have tomorrow. There are some outstanding matches in there. Now, there is a dull match in there, but we will figure that out as we guide through that path. So thank you so much for watching this episode of World Cup Today. Make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe to the Nick Burt Sports Network so you see all of these every morning and every evening when we do World Cup Tonight, recap everything. Like I mentioned yesterday, at NickBurt13 on X/Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Those will be your, match previews in 2 minutes and 20 seconds, more quicker form. Get everything you need to know hour before kickoff, because I know sometimes you just don't have the time in the day to watch these videos, and I get it. But at NickBurt13 on Twitter/X, here on the Nick Burt Sports Network. Of course, we have World Cup Today and then World Cup Tonight. Recap all the action. So thank you so much for watching. We will see you again, well, I guess later tonight for World Cup Tonight. But if you just want the morning previews, we will see you tomorrow for another episode here on the Nick Burt Sports Network.